All right, let's bring in Professor at Touro University. Go ahead, Amir, real quick.
No, I was just going to say before I get to Thane, because I'm sure he has a great insight on this as well, is the one-sided nature of this is very unique, and that should be very troubling. That this is not a hearing where you have an adversarial process, which is usually required to get to the truth of things. This is a very slanted presentation of evidence to the American public.
And a TV-produced one, by the way. Professor at Touro University, Thane Rosenbaum. Thane, what gets your attention in this?
A number of things, Bob. One thing is, what happened to seditious conspiracy? I'm curious what Amir has to say about that. Remember, there are 900 people that were arrested. Half of them have already been charged or pled guilty. A number of them have already gone to trial. Not a single one of them were confronted with this charge of insurrection. The ones that were charged with seditious conspiracy. What is the Justice Department supposed to do with this now? Now, all of a sudden, it's been recommended to them that the president should be prosecuted for insurrection. But they've seemed to have taken a legal position that that's not something that was part of this scheme. And so, I was surprised that I didn't hear the word seditious conspiracy, because that was the highest charge that has come out in the cases against the actual rioters. And it seems to have disappeared. Okay. I don't know exactly how the Justice Department is what they're supposed to make of this. They would have to undo everything they've done, at least with respect to the charge of seditious conspiracy and insurrection. So that's interesting.
Before we get to the other thing, could you explain what the difference is between the two to non-lawyers, to the layman, the difference between seditious conspiracy and insurrection?
Well, the insurrection to essentially overthrow the government is a much more serious charge. And what it does do in this instance, Bob, which you can see why, it essentially says you can no longer hold public office. So that's one major difference between. So you can see why the committee is referring to one and not referring to the other. But it has a lot to do with the origins of the crime. And the idea that, what the committee knows is that there is an absence of direct evidence linking the rioters to what the president said, right? There's seen a lot of evidence of the president standing around and watching. There's, watching the riot. But, this is, as you and Amir have talked about, it's a self-selective presentation of the evidence. Like, for instance, I don't know if you've already discussed this with Amir, but, they seem to have left out the key exonerating sentence: we will march over peacefully and patriotically and make our voices heard. Now, that, to me, is game over, right? Once the president said peacefully and patriotically, he didn't incite a riot. So they instead focus on the words, "we have to fight like hell," in an email that he sent weeks before or a week before. By the way, under the Brandenburg standard, Bob, it has to be imminent incitement. It can't be something you said a week ago. Yeah. It has to be something you said right before everyone took off to do it. But what he said before they took off to do it was peaceful and patriotic. So again, there are different elements to the charges. They've been mixing and matching colors in some ways in order to try to confuse everyone. But the real problem is the Justice Department will not be confused. And they understand the specific elements of intent that they're going to have to establish. And so what you saw today was a pastiche of elements. But if you're a prosecutor, you're looking at this and going, I don't know how I'm going to use this to line up the elements that are necessary to establish the actual crime.
Yeah. And plus, what you seem to be suggesting also is if the president was behind the insurrection of our government, yet the highest charge of all the people who are actually attacking the Capitol is seditious conspiracy, there's something missing there. That's what you're suggesting, correct?
One last thing to that, to just make more clear what I just said and how you interpreted it. The vast majority of the 400 that have already either pled guilty or been or charged or have been prosecuted in a trial, they were not prosecuted for seditious conspiracy. It's only a handful of people, Bob. 5, 6 people. That's it. Everyone else has been either obstruction of a federal meeting or, breaking and entering, various destruction of federal property, attacking a policeman. But nobody was getting it. Like half a dozen people had seditious conspiracy of the 900. Now, all of a sudden, here we go. Yeah. Now we have insurrection. And again, when I looked at that, I thought to myself, where are they going with that? If I was the Justice Department, I would say, thanks a lot. Thanks for undoing our entire legal theory strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, not only that, but let's face it, all three of us on this right here knew that the charge of insurrection was going to come against Donald Trump when they initiated and originated this committee. We knew that was going to happen. But what we're questioning is whether there's a there, whether you could actually substantiate those kinds of charges.
Thane, Amir. Conspiracy is important, and they know, the committee knows, that within a conspiracy, Bob, you need an agreement. You have to have a matching of, we had a meeting, and we had a discussion, and we had an agreement. And they know there was no agreement between the White House and the rioters. So that's another reason why you want to stay away from seditious conspiracy, because you don't want to use the conspiracy with the president, because he seemed to, he doesn't even use email. So the direct links that you normally need are not present here.
Very interesting from both of you, Amir and Thane. Thank you so much. We're going to take a break here and continue the conversation. Stay with us, folks.